Hello, my friends. How are you today? Seems like the whole world's on lockdown. Hope everybody's doing all right. We're actually going to talk today, the whole hour, about meditation, mental health. So let me get Jon on here and we'll start chatting about it. What's up, buddy? How are you?
Good. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, just 1 minute afternoon, I suppose.
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm doing really well, man. I mean, all things considering,
Yeah.
The whole Western world at least is on lockdown. So I've actually been having lots and lots of mental health and meditation related discussions with people. So it's actually, I think, a good thing for us to be doing this as our last live of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's crazy out there. People are shut in yet again. And I think it was difficult for all of us the first time around when things were really shut down and everybody was isolated and that sort of thing. And we're back into it. So what better time than to talk about meditation and mental health? How are you doing?
I'm all right.
Okay, fair enough. That's fair enough, I suppose.
No, it seems like a good time to discuss the usefulness of meditation.
Well, as with all of our single topic lives, I think it's probably good to start with some definitions. And meditation is both a really important and simple and difficult topic, because I think you and I, although we're both multiple decades probably into making records and expertise on mixing and production and the business and all that kind of stuff, comparatively we are much newer on or much less experienced on the meditation front. And I have a number of friends, including some that I see are already joined in, who are a friend of mine who's a Buddhist monk, people who have gone much, much deeper on meditation than either you or I. So I wanted to say first off that there are levels of expertise and that I hope to reach and journeys I hope to go on, and I'm sure you do as well. But I think despite the fact that we are comparatively amateurish is not the right word, but less experienced than we are with record making, it's something that's been so important for both you and I in our lives, especially in the last few years. And as it applies to being a creative person, but really I think applies to pretty much anybody doing anything. I think it's a hugely important thing. I think it's worth talking about our experience of it.
Yeah. I think that's really what we're here for.
Yeah, exactly. So I just want people to know, and fortunately, the good news is people who are much, much deeper into meditation tend to be the least judgmental and most kind people in the world. So forgive us if we mess up some definitions or misuse some words, but maybe we could
correct us.
Yeah, we could just start by kind of defining what we're talking about. Meditation is one of those terms that is sort of like exercise, where depending on who you talk to, exercise could be marathon running, it could be walking your dog, it could be doing yoga, it could be bodybuilding. There's a whole spectrum of definitions for exercise, just like there's for meditation. But you and I specifically we practice different versions at different times of what they call mindfulness meditation. Yeah. Specifically, you and I both love the Sam Harris app called Waking Up. Yeah. The Waking Up app, which is designed by the neuroscientist and general philosopher Sam Harris, which is a tremendous app. We also, I don't know if you've used Headspace. I've used Headspace and like that fine.
I used to use it for nighttime, for kind of sleep time.
But so specifically what we're talking about is a daily practice of increasing your awareness of the world. And there's, Beanie Boys. There's lots of different ways to do it, but you and I are, me up until 62 days ago, because I just did another hour today. We're basically 10 minutes a day. You're a little more disciplined than I. Maybe you do a little bit more, maybe you do a little less, but 20. Essentially, 20. Okay. So an everyday
10 at a time. Yeah, everyday practice.
So an everyday practice using a generally using a guided meditation that will help train one's brain into this practice of mindfulness meditation. There are actually even some questions about Money's in the Bag asked, when I hop on my motorcycle, I ride, I don't think I just go, is that meditation? And that may be meditative in some sense, but it is different than what we're talking about, which is a specific practice.
That would be flow state.
Yeah, it might be flow state. Yeah. Things can be meditative, but what we're talking about is a specific practice and training to build awareness of one's own mind, essentially.
Yeah.
My practice for the last, I'd say 6 or 7 years has been a mostly daily 10 minutes with a guide, sometimes without a guide. I'd probably 9 out of 10 days, and trying to do it in the morning. And then recently I decided to try, based on the philosopher and VC, I don't know what else, how is he described, Naval, who's been on Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss, talk about his prescription for meditation practice, which is a 60 minutes a day unguided. So I can talk more about that experience. You want to just talk
for you?
Yeah. Do you want to just talk about your experience with meditation in the last few years, or how you got into it?
Yeah, let's quickly answer the one on the front right there. Prepping sessions is meditation for me. I mean, it's again, back to what Matt was just saying. That's meditative. That isn't meditation. Well, that's not the practice of.
Oh, I was going to say, let me just really quickly, I listened to some of the Sam Harris on the Waking Up app, which I recommend for everybody. If you're interested in the meditation stuff, the Waking Up app, I think there's a free version, and then there's a monthly subscription. It's like $100 a year. But if you email them and say, hey, times are hard, I can't afford it, they will give you a year subscription on your honor for free. And then in a year, if you still feel like you don't have the means to do it, but you want to keep doing it, they will offer it for free again. So the Waking Up app is amazing. And they will give it to you for free. But I was listening to some of in addition to guided meditations and different teachers, he has a bunch of sort of theory and lessons, and define mindfulness as clear, non-judgmental, undistracted attention. And it's basically what meditation does is trains your brain for that kind of stuff. I mean,
with hope that with the practice, it will seep into the rest of your life, right? So simple things of paying attention to opening a car handle door, simple thing of, moving your eggs around in a pan, like all these things can turn into, mindfulness focus, right? So that's kind of.
Yeah, for people that think of meditation as, you don't think about anything, it's actually quite the opposite of that.
Quite the opposite of that,
Mindfulness meditation training is essentially the process of sitting for 10 minutes in the morning, or some amount of time, but 10 minutes is a good starting point, and oftentimes with a guide. And the idea is you're going to get distracted over and over. What you realize is, so they give you some sort of a center to go back to. In transcendental meditation, you pay a fee, you go through a course, they give you a mantra. Vipassana, which is just focusing on the breath, comes from the Buddhist tradition. There's lots of different ways to do it, but essentially you have some center to come back to. So when you get distracted, you realize you're distracted, then come back to the center, and that training and that ping-ponging is the beginning of mindfulness. And what you realize all these incredible things right off the bat, which is, and this is the reason somebody guided versus unguided, the reason to have a guided meditation is someone just goes, hey, you're probably lost in thought. Notice the thought, then come back to your breath. And the process of doing that is the process of practicing mindfulness meditation. And over the course of time, that, like you said, the practice of recognizing you're lost in thought and then coming back to a separate place, it teaches you that you are separate from, or there is a place that is separate from your own thoughts. So most of the time we are constantly lost in thoughts. We have thought loops. We think about the same things. And what mindfulness meditation training does is it basically shows you that.
It shows and allows you to hopefully be comfortable with what is.
Yeah, it certainly gets you more comfortable and more aware of how often we are distracted. And so things like thoughts and emotions and stresses and sounds and basically everything can be an object of meditation. So it takes all the things that you perceive and sort of separates them from your consciousness. And what I've experienced with that, and then please give me your journey, because I asked you about your journey and then interrupted you and started talking again.
Please.
The first time I started meditating, within a week or so, my anxiety was reduced dramatically. I'm certainly prone to anxiety, prone to thought loops, I think, like most people are, sometimes prone to depression. The practice of meditation is basically a training in separating yourself from being led by your thoughts to instead observe your thoughts and emotions. And even just 10 minutes a day for a week, the first time I did it, I was like, I feel so much better. Starting the day with it changes things dramatically for me. And that's one of the reasons once I started doing it, I was like, I need to keep doing this. Sorry, please give me your
I was
thoughts.
just thinking, I will. I also really like you leading the show here, considering you just did 62 days in a row of an hour a day. Right?
Yeah, we'll get into all of that.
That's something I've never done. I didn't really have a desire to do unguided. I've done hours guided. The unguided, someone also talked about maybe you can go through the benefits of the unguided versus guided, and how because I had that question for you too. What was your experience there? But I just wanted to reiterate the fact that you notice when you come back to the thought that is distracting, if you want to come back to it, that the half-life of the thought is way shorter than you thought. No pun intended there.
Yeah.
Right. So you're like, oh, this is really hard. This is really, it's already gone. Something else came in. A truck drove by, or a dog barked, or something. Like, if you actually can focus in on that. I love this. I mean, granted, being an engineer, this is part of it, but I love the sound meditate. It's really easy. That's the easy one for me. The breath isn't as interesting to me after doing it for, just shy of 2 years of practice. Coming back to the breath is not as exciting or interesting to me as focusing on a sound, because it's really easy to go really deep into that sound, because that's what we do for a living. I mean, I can hear a violin bow from start to finish of the last bit of resin left on the horsehair, right? Like, I can hear that, and that to me is more interesting than my own breath. In fact, I love Sam's point that he rarely brings it back to the breath. It's rarely one thing, and that's why I like that versus the headspace or the calm, which is, it's less repetitious to me, which is why the guided, I was distracted by guided meditation. So I had the opposite experience when I was using headspace or calm. It's like, this person's voice is kind of annoying to me, or not as soothing. I don't really believe you, because you keep just saying, go back to the breath. It's like, well, there's other things, other sensations I'm feeling. Like, I have lower back pain, so I can breathe into lower back pain. And that's a focal point of meditation for me, right? Yeah. I can breathe into it, understand that pain. And Sam and waking up are a bit more broad to me in that sense. And maybe I haven't used Headspace or Calm in a while, so maybe they've evolved to that, but I don't think that's their business model as much as the Vipassana. Like,
where did you start? What got you to start meditating?
Learning Headspace, and like getting.
Somebody had to tell you about Headspace. What was the? Do you remember?
I mean, people have been talking about meditation to me for decades.
And at some point, you were just like, "I should just try it. There's an app.
I should just try this." And it was after I was learning how to mitigate my anxiety other ways. And then what I realized was that I was really, really good at blanking. At quote unquote not thinking, it was actually because when you're mixing, when you're kind of in these flow states that people talk about, get on your motorcycle and ride, those are flow states and those are meditative states, but that's not the practice of. And when I realized that you can actually train your mind to be more in that realm, more regularly, more often, it started making sense to my brain. So what you were talking about, like just the first week of 10 minutes a day changed everything for me. I started at 20 minutes a day. I've sunk down into 20 minutes a day in two times, like one in the afternoon or early evening after work's done or between songs. But now I think I looked today, 580 days or something in a row. It's clear to me that it seeps into other parts. And that's what I like most about it. I don't actually get the benefit as much from the 10 minutes of sitting as I do through the rest of the day from doing 100%. That practice, right?
Yep.
I think the practice is cool. It's especially when it's eye closed meditation versus eye open. It's really restful, kind of start getting centered. But I mean, I started when you said, how are you doing today? Like, I'm not having the best morning, and I don't really want to talk about why, because it's not really, there's no benefit to gain from other people knowing, but this is a true test. The morning is a true test of like sitting with, do I really want to think about what's actually happening, or can I realize that I can choose to not be so attentive to what's happening? But this circumstance last year or 2 years ago I would have canceled talking to you. Like, I would have just been like, I don't really want to do this today, and kind of sulked and sat in the negativity. And so
I'm sorry, just say the reason you are this way now, whereas you would have canceled and you would have sulked, is because in the morning you are sitting for 20 minutes, observing your mind.
Yeah, and detaching from that's not defining what my day could be like, or what I want it to be like. To simplify that, I don't want it to be what it could be. I want it to be what it is. So I think I'm still here.
Yeah. So I think there's two things. I want to talk from sort of a basic standpoint a little bit longer, and then we can get into sort of the deeper stuff. I think everybody, I can't think of anybody who I've ever been in this situation where I wouldn't recommend this. I think everybody would benefit from starting the day, checking in with themselves, not starting with inputs. So not starting with emails, texts, whatever, like just starting with some sort of silence and checking in yourself. And the best version of that I've found is meditation. And it's, even if you just start the day 10 minutes before you look at social media, before you're doing that stuff. And there's plenty of free guided stuff out there. Yeah. Again, we recommend the Waking Up app, which you can get for free. You email them and say, times are hard, and I can't afford a subscription. They'll give you a free one. Support them and pay for it, because it'll change your life. Absolutely. But you can try these things out, but starting the day. And so it's a combination of starting the day with something where you're, again, like checking in on yourself and doing something in your own head, and instead of getting inputs, outputting something. And some people will journal, some people do those sorts of things. But the idea of sitting, which I also do, by the way, but sitting with your own thoughts for 10 minutes. And the other thing that I think is a really underrated part of this is doing something consistent in the morning of really any kind, doing it every day. So people are asking, how much time do I do is important. I think the only important thing for starting is doing it every day. That's a great point. Thank you. If you do it for 5 minutes at the beginning of the day, as long as you do it every day, you will see a huge benefit from it. And I think you can't imagine not doing it in the morning. And by the way, there's been times something dire will need to happen for that to not be part of the morning routine. I just can't imagine it. Yeah. So I've been doing these. We'll get into it more, but I've been doing an hour a day and trying to do it in the morning. But I had a session early with the UK, a Zoom session, and I just didn't have the full hour where I got to be awake enough to sit for an hour silently. Otherwise, I'll get sleepy. So I didn't quite have time, and my day felt very, very different. I ended up doing it in the evening. But I would say you should forgive yourself. And if you're doing that at any time of the day, I mean, Naval talks about this. It's not the morning. It's at any point of the day, taking 60 minutes to do nothing. That's the practice. He's not talking about it being timely at all. I think a morning 10 minutes and then doing that later if you need it to have something. Yeah. He does recommend doing it. He does recommend doing it in the morning. He did. But also I heard it as if you can do it in the day and take 60 minutes to yourself, unguided, that sounds like a great thing. 60 minutes a lot, and I do want to get into that. There's some questions about it too. But starting with 5 or 10 minutes and a guided meditation to someone to just say, hey, you're probably distracted. Come back to some sort of center, or observe your breath, or observe the sounds in the room. It's hard to describe how powerful it is quickly if you haven't done it before, or to someone who hasn't done it before. But it basically makes you realize very clearly that you're constantly running thought loops, and you are your thoughts. And what you realize for meditating for a few days, even again, 5 or 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes is sort of an easy amount of time for people to take. So 10 minutes a day. By day 7 or 8, you just start to realize, like, I'm thinking the same things over and over. And you kind of it's kind of funny. You just go, I'm stressed about my dog or my ex or my work or my bills or whatever. I'm stressed about the same thing in the same way, and I'm not making any progress. And the process of being distracted and coming back to a center over and over makes it very obvious that you don't have to be that way. And then of course there's levels and levels and levels to this. People going, one of the things I wanted to do this year is I wanted to go on a silent retreat. But of course, it's not super available these days. So I decided to do this hour a day thing. But I don't know. I'm trying to just get through some of the basics. A lot of people are like, I've never meditated. What should I do? And I would say
touch on
10 minutes a day every day. Yeah,
let's touch on two things that you just said. Also, it's the repetitious nature of it, doing it every day.
Habits.
And building strong habits. But also at the same time, while doing it, and you say 10 minutes is easy, a lot of people are going to say that that's not easy. And I would say that this week is my first, or last week into this week, kind of is my first week back towards feeling good into it. I had about 2 or 3 weeks where everyone was highly distracted, and I didn't judge myself because that's part of the practice.
Non-judgment is a huge priority.
Yeah. So I wanted to just circle back to those two things. Like, it's not easy. And, you've been practicing, you said, for 7 or 8 years, and me just shy of 2 years. Yeah. It's not always easy, but I still do it. It's like mixing a record isn't always easy. I still do it. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's not. I don't understand why you would not do something just because it's not easy. That's never why you start cooking a ragu. Ragu cooking isn't easy. Sorry, we brought food into
21 minutes. 21 minutes.
So
you did it.
Unintentional too.
I know. 21 minutes. That's why you're beautiful, my friend.
But making a ragu is not easy. But that's what Italian grandmas do. Like, they might start their morning like with that. That's meditative to them, right? To me, it is. Like cooking a stew is meditative, but it's not the practice of meditating. Yeah, Joe, it's been 18 years for me, and still not easy. Joe is a great old friend from Long Island, and a meditation teacher, and also a great musician and songwriter. And
it's something that is difficult sometimes, very difficult sometimes. When I said it's not difficult 10 minutes, I meant people can find 10 minutes. Those may be difficult 10 minutes, but you can find 10 minutes in your day. I guarantee it. I don't know. I know some of the busiest people that any of you have ever met. They can make 10 minutes to meditate.
I love sometimes Sam will say, like, you don't have to plan your day right now. Like, you got 10 minutes, take these 10 minutes. You could plan, the day's going to come anyway.
The other thing I wanted to, sorry, please.
No, that just resonates with me a lot because I like planning my day. I don't plan in advance. I like to plan the day in the morning. I just do it after that.
Yeah, I think that's great.
So are you going to say something?
I was going to say it's much like exercise. Even the meditations that have been difficult, or if I'm extremely stressed or I just don't want to make the time, I've never finished a meditation and gone, I shouldn't have done that.
Exactly.
Never one time. Every time I've done it, I've been glad I've done it, and that should be reason enough for people to try.
Every time I make a stew, I feel the same way. I never think, why did I do that?
That's fantastic.
But this morning, just to add to that, this morning was the same thing. I actually was like, oh, this one's going to be really hard. There's a lot on the mind. And then as soon as it was done, I said, oh, that was helpful. Yeah. It was so helpful. My God.
So I want to maybe get into the hour thing that I've been doing.
Yes, please.
I was cryptically counting on my whiteboard for the last now 62 days. Not really talking about it because I wanted people, if they were curious, to be curious. A few people DM'd and said, I don't want to know what this is. It's driving me nuts, but I don't want you to tell me. I'm enjoying it. But I was basically counting, and part of that was accountability, right? Like, I knew that I had started counting something on my Instagram and started talking with people about it. And I was like, this is just going to make it more likely that I continue to do this, because I actually started doing it right around, if people are OG Live with Matt Rad fans from 6 months ago, I started doing it early on in the pandemic. And it was actually when the George Floyd stuff happened, and right down the street from me, there were protests and riots and helicopters everywhere. And I was checking on my family in Oakland. And so I did 14 or 15 days of an hour a day, and then stopped because things got crazy, and it just didn't stick. And I was like, I know I need to do this again. So when I started it a few months ago, it was my second attempt. So that's the other thing, is a big part, as I said before, a big part of meditation stuff, non-judgment, not judging yourself, not judging the craziness of your thoughts. You're in thought loops, and the whole time you're in meditation, you're distracted, and then you come back once. Non-judgment is a huge part of it.
Yeah, and it's actually almost, you correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like it's almost impossible to quickly lose or realize that the judgment part does no good. Like, with the practice, you'll learn that it does no good.
Yeah, it's just another another emotion.
Yes, exactly.
You start to inhabit something negative. So the reason I started doing the hour meditation is because of this guy Naval, who has his own particular view of meditation, which is you don't need a guide, you don't need all these things. I don't agree with him, and we'll talk about that in a second. But that just sitting for an hour every day for 60 days, silent, eyes closed, set a timer, no guide, no distractions, no nothing, super comfortable seated position, so you can actually just sit for an hour and close your eyes and just, without judgment, just watch your thoughts. And most of it is being distracted, especially the first few weeks. I was just thinking, and occasionally being like, oh, I'm thinking. Oh, interesting. Okay. And then I sort of sit, and then I start thinking again. And the process of doing that in his description is that after 40 or 50 days, you kind of run out of the same things to think about. You start digging deeper and deeper, and as he calls it, your mental inbox is clearing. So that, I'm not one of those people that has 5,000 unread emails. I know a lot of people that are like that, but we all have versions of that in our brain. And Naval's analogy is that spending an hour a day in silence, and the only prescription being be comfortable, close your eyes, set an hour timer, and non-judgment, is that you will basically go through your mental inbox. And I will say a lot of that did happen. And it's not like I sit down now like I did this morning and was just like zen and clear and just pure awareness. I was thinking a lot, but it's much more clear, and I'm much more aware of what's going on. And my days are much more stable, much more focused, much less anxious. I think the thing about one of the reasons I did it is because I couldn't go on a long retreat, or because of COVID, I didn't want to go out and try to figure that out. But I think in order to do an hour, you really should have a base of having done it for 10 minutes a day for a while to build the habit, because there's something, and it's in one of the Sam Harris, in the Waking Up app. I should keep calling it Waking Up, not Sam Harris. In the Waking Up app, in one of the sort of tutorial lesson things, he talks about mindfulness and defines it, and he will do a better job than I will. So I encourage you all to get that. Again, the Waking Up app. Maybe I should pin that on there. But he talks about it sort of in stages, that when you're starting out meditating, really what you're doing is learning how to concentrate. And somebody just said it on there. Not being able to concentrate better. That really starting out with meditation is training your brain to concentrate and be aware of your own mind. And it's the combination of those two things that allow you to get deeper and deeper into things. So when you do need to learn how to focus on a certain thing, and it doesn't mean you're focusing for 10 minutes straight, or it doesn't mean that you're
it's impossible.
Yeah,
it's nearly impossible.
That's exactly the point, is that it's actually, there's very few people, and maybe the most Zen Buddhist monks can sit for an hour and just be pure awareness, but it's almost impossible to not be thinking. And that's the point. But that's
the point. Being aware of awareness, and awareness changes. There's no way to concentrate on the same thing for that 10 minutes.
Yeah, and so it's
constantly changing, and you need to be aware of the changing awareness.
Yes, it's allowing your brain to do what it does and observe it, and that separates you from your emotions. It doesn't reduce the richness of emotions that you feel, because you can go, I feel blissful right now, and then you're aware of it and you can inhabit it, and you can make that choice more easily. But if you're angry about something and you notice anger as a separate from you, you go, oh, I'm observing my anger. By definition, you're not being led by it. So part of when you start out doing meditation is you're really just learning how to concentrate. And I'm still learning how to concentrate. I'm still learning how to focus on things. But once you get to the point where you can concentrate on specific aspects, and sometimes it's the breath, sometimes it's a mantra, for you it's a sound. What happens is
those are my favorite. It
can be.
Yeah.
It can be any of those things.
Yeah.
Once you learn how to concentrate a bit, it allows you to, you start focusing on a particular object, you get distracted, you come back to it, but ultimately it starts to expand to the rest of your life. And like you're talking about now, when you're meditating after doing 500 and something days, the meditation is important, but the meditation is almost like a warm up for the rest of your day, where you're now more present in the rest of your day. You're probably better at concentrating on things and focusing on things. You're more aware of extreme emotions or subtle things or whatever. It brings you, for lack of a better term, more richness in your life. Mm-hmm. You live your life more rather than your thoughts and anxieties leading you.
Well, you struck on something like just being aware of anger was a thing. And this morning I said out loud in bed, because I got awoken with something you wouldn't want to deal with right away. I was like, I'm trying so hard not to be angry right now. And the moment I said that, I was like, oh yeah, cool, that's it. I'm not going to be angry, because you have a choice, but you have to be aware of the choice that you're making. Like, I could have chosen to be, but once I recognize that that's the word, like, why would I want to feel that emotion? So I don't want to get angry. And it's hard. It's hard. And that felt easy this morning. It feels like a bit of a victory of the practice. Just kind of wrapping up the year and doing this with you right now. It's like, well, that was a real time benefit of the practice of almost 2 years of doing it, where anger didn't occur. The thought came to mind, and then I said it out loud, and then just kind of combated it.
There's a great. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
But that's proof that the practice has worked for me, and then if it has worked for me, then it can work for anybody else, right? So it's just nice to have these real-time examples, which, I was in way higher spirits this week. I would love that to come into this conversation, and though I'm not, at least I could recognize that and then stay present within that. But also, another thing you were talking about is awareness and attention and concentration and all that thing, and all that stuff that was just mentioned in that question. That's all we have, right? That's like the most palpable kind of currency we have, and it's being exploited against us, for other people's benefits that we all know about, that we don't have to talk about on this podcast. But we have to regain control of that.
I think it's worth getting into that a little bit.
I'm just not an expert on it. It's just hard for me to talk about like what social media does, right? We already know. You can point to the social dilemma. You can point to Tristan Harris discussing these things and like let people find out on that. But feel free. I just like, they'll say it better than I'm going to ever say it. But what I can do is try to maximize my attention and my focus on, even if I open up and look at Instagram, like closing it really quickly. Like those are those catches of the practice that I'm witnessing as I get more advanced in the practice. It's like, well, I'm still sucked into it, but I care more about the reorientation back to the task at hand that I'm trying to do, right? So like if I'm mixing a record and we talk about breaks. So say I do 45 minutes hardcore and I want to take a 15-minute break. If I look at Instagram in that 15 minutes, even for 30 seconds, I forget what I'm supposed to be doing. And then there's a reorientation period, just cognitively, whether we want to admit it or not, back to what we were doing. So I want to minimize those, right? And this practice can help that. So thinking about attention is kind of all we really have, our time and the attention within that time. I mean, time is what's the word? It's just not everlasting, right? So we only have so much of it.
Can't get more of it.
We just can't.
I think that's actually and you're absolutely right that there's like with meditation, there are people who have much deeper insight onto the attention economy and
they're studying
our brains, and they're studying
expertise.
Yeah, but I think it's important everybody realizes that we are increasingly in an era where our attention and interests are being monetized by the things on our phones, the things being apps or all the other ways you could describe it. And there are so many ways for people to grab our attention and access the unthinking brain, the monkey mind, that sort of thing, with algorithms and notifications and all these sorts of things, as talked about in Social Dilemma and all these other books and think pieces and all this. Meditation is the antidote to that. It's the best antidote we have. It reclaims your attention and focus in a way that nothing else does. It separates you from the things that are trying to grab your attention and trains you to understand what's going on and listen to and look at your own mind. It is the opposite of what social media is doing and again, we're on Instagram right now. I mean, these things are incredibly useful, and unless you want to get rid of them out of your life, you need to
think about it daily, but
I know, and you need to think about ways to combat the negative sides of it, and meditation is far and away the number one thing. Having, when you say meditation generally, a daily morning practice of mindfulness meditation training.
Right. That's the
10 minutes.
That's the key.
Yep.
That's the key, because thinking about I've heard people say, "Oh, that 10 minutes is the best 10 minutes of my day," and I'm like, "Well, that's odd, because the 10 minutes is supposed to make your day." Yeah, of course. Sometimes it is, but if that's all that it is, then the practice isn't being done right, because it
or you haven't gotten there yet, or whatever. Like, I mean, there's a lot of flexibility in how. I mean, it was interesting on a live a few weeks ago. Somebody asked about the songs. Like, when you're meditating, do you have songs running through your head? And I'm like, 100% of the time, or 95% of the time. And you said that never happens to you.
Never happens.
So the experience of meditation is going to be very different for different people. It might take a while to catch the things we're talking about. I know. So sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, my point is that if that's the way, if you've been doing the practice and that is still the case, then the practice might not be done the proper way, with the right intention behind it all. Is all I'm saying. Like, the explaining that 10 minutes is not the point of the practice. The practice is for the other 23 hours and 50 minutes of the day, right? It's not for the 10 minutes, because then all you have is 10 minutes of awareness.
It's like getting your mind in shape. You do exercise.
That's why you started it great, like exercise. Exactly.
Yeah. When you
do 30 minutes to an hour, so your heart rate is up and your metabolism is up throughout the day, and gives you energy. It gives burning whatever energy source you've chosen depending on your diet, and it revs you up.
Can we just do a little bit of kind of bullet points of ways that having a meditation practice has specifically benefited you? There's so many of them, but I just want, because I think that's one of those things that people are like, what is it good for? So my anxiety goes down, my focus goes up, I'm more present with the people in my life, I don't stay upset, angry, stressed nearly as long as I used to. I don't know. Give me some.
Road rage isn't really a thing. Feel less impulsive.
Less
reactive.
Yeah, less reactive is a great way to say it.
Granted, these are most of the time. There are obviously times where
it's more of the time. It's like your anxiety won't go away, but the comparative duration will be reduced, or the intensity might be reduced. And by the way, I still get super anxious. I still get these things still happen to me, but it's so much less than before I was meditating every day. And in terms of, all of those are like general perceptions of life and general things that happen, but they of course apply to work. They allow me to work longer and more focused and more relaxed. Weird things like, I'm not sure if it's in one of the waking up things, but talk about relax the muscles in your face. I never even thought that when I'm sitting by myself with my eyes closed, that my face is just a little bit tense, and I just go, weird little things like that.
My brother brought that up to me like a decade ago. He's like, I don't smile as much because it takes more muscles to smile. And I was like, granted, if Christopher's watching this, I think he could smile a little bit more. But it does. We should relax our face muscles. There's no reason to smile while you're meditating. Like, no one. What's the benefit of doing that? I mean, maybe there's a moment that's so profound, like the sun comes up and it hits you, and you have nothing but joy, and you do it. But if you're sitting for an hour and you're like, I don't know. I
don't know why smile is an example. For me, it was like a light grimace, or just tension.
No, but it is. It takes 1,000 more muscles to smile than it does to stay straight. Like, that's
for sure. Yeah.
So,
but
that's why the example makes sense. That's all.
Recognizing tension in your body.
I think we should all smile as much as possible.
Okay, good.
For the record,
as long as we should smile a lot is the ultimate prescription. Yeah, you get a recognition of an awareness of your body and your mind in a way that I don't think there's a parallel for it. Let's see. Maybe we can get to.
I mean, also let's bring it into work. Let's bring it into the creative process. Thinking like I talked about the sounds and how like a violin bow. I've been mixing a fair amount for my homie Rob Moose, and he's a string arranger and performer. And I'm listening to his decays. Like I'm listening to reverb decays. I'm listening to all this last millisecond when you're dialing in a reverb and you're like, well, I'm at 1.8 second decay. Like when you have good monitoring and you have good focus and that lack of impatience to rush through, like you pay attention to that last 0.5 seconds of decay times. You pay attention to the release on a compressor if you're going to do that, to understand like how something is flowing and interacting with another instrument. And it's a awareness of what is affecting every aspect of the process. And there's little excuse to be lazy when you're so aware.
You also get more joy. You're less inclined to be lazy and what lazy is on a lot of levels is distraction too, because it's like, I should do this thing, but then you have a thing you can look. I can look at my phone. I can do another. You can pull yourself away. But when you what a practice has done for me is allowed me to retain more focus for longer.
Yeah, exactly. I'm wondering if just on that note. Feel free to comment or not, because you're in the room doing these things a bit more than I am. Like songs that are less than 2 minutes long or just over 2 minutes long, that don't have a bridge or like have a second chorus and that's basically it and it ends. I'm wondering if that's part of this, the attention span, you take a break for lunch or you go get a drink. You're like, oh, we'll come back and write the bridge, and then like everyone's sitting in the studio on their iPhone and like, oh, actually this song doesn't need a bridge, and then it just comes out. Like, could that be changed with this amount of focus? Have we lost focus so we just don't finish our ideas? Because to me those records sound like ideas that were great and then they're not completed, like incomplete ideas. But then there's the flip side of it, which makes you run it back to play it again, and then that becomes addicting and then kind of fits into the same
I think it's more a part of the distribution mechanisms than it is people's. I think the distribution mechanisms are affecting people's attention and affecting length of songs.
But it all stems from attention, right?
It all stems from attention, yeah.
From realizing that we can't have you that much longer, so we'll incentivize the algorithm to, favor shorter records with energy that grabs your attention right away in the first 15 seconds, or else we'll like put you deeper in the playlist so no one hears what you're doing, right? We know this all exists. That's part of our job, is to understand that when we're writing the songs, but that stems from, I'm going like that level deeper. It's like that stems from this, like the awareness not being a priority and the attention not being a priority.
My patience, I think you're right about that. My patience for everything has increased dramatically since I meditate. Like,
right? That's a good bullet point.
Way more patience.
Patience up.
There's something about the anxiety of feeling like you need to get something done or you don't have enough time is mostly in your head. One of my favorite, there's 3 different versions of this quote, but one of my favorite quotes attributed to Mark Twain, because anything brilliant should be attributed to Mark Twain probably, is he said, I'm an old man.
So?
If you don't know who it is, it's probably Mark Twain.
Nice.
He said, I'm an old man and I've known many troubles, but most of them never happened.
Mm-hmm. Heard that
which
before.
is just a beautiful quote on anxiety, that so much of what we freak out about are things in our head, our potentials, and to dwell on them is logically just a waste of time, unless you have a problem to solve. To be anxious about something that may or may not happen in the future, once you've had a sense of, okay, that's what this is going to be, and I've prepped myself. Once you can no longer control the outcome, the only thing you have is your own mind, and meditation is huge about relaxing that and just understanding it, just going, oh, I'm thinking about that thing that hasn't happened in the same way that I can't control, and you're in a place of non-judgment. You go, oh, that's interesting, and by definition, it's not inhabiting your body anymore. It's fascinating every time it happens, and it keeps happening, and that's why I keep doing it.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
How many are you going to continue doing this hour a day? For you've already hit 62. So do you have
today,
plans to continue? And if not, or if so, how often will you do this? practice?
I don't know. I certainly will continue to do a daily practice of some sort. I think I will continue to do the hour because it gets more interesting each time I do it. A few of the days have been harder than others. There's definitely been days where I've been like, am I done yet? There's a few times I've opened my eyes and then just reset. But it's something that, especially the last few days have been different, and it keeps getting deeper and calmer and more interesting. Because the other thing, meditation is a great antidote to boredom. And the main antidote we have to boredom right now is social media, which is the fucking worst. It's like eating pixie sticks for your brains. It doesn't do anything. It just makes your brain dull and fat and bad. It's a bad brain diet.
I wish I had a mic so I can drop it on your behalf.
But what meditation does is it brings you, it's not really joy or pleasure, but the ability to be in the present and observe things becomes interesting and becomes fulfilling. And boy, is that powerful to be able to sit by yourself doing nothing and just be interested. Like it's so much better than, like looking at other people on social media, living their best life or whatever it is. To be able to sit by yourself and just observe becomes it's something I look forward to. Or
with someone else. I don't even think at some point, I
was just talking about doing the hours by myself.
Yeah, no, I'm just seeing it even beyond that. It's like
100%.
Let's learn how to do that in other company.
Yeah, so I think I'll probably keep doing the hour for a while. The thing I really want to do is I want to go on a silent retreat. And what I hear about silent retreats, I don't have expertise on it because I've never done it. But all the people I know that have done it is that you really need to go for like a week. That doing 2 or 3 days. I have another thought about the hour meditation thing. Doing 2 or 3 days is you're kind of in the same place and you're silent for your third day. And then getting into day 4, 5, 6, 7, that's when you really break through to the other side. I think a micro version of that, again, I haven't done the week silent meditation, so I don't know. A micro version of that is this hour meditation a day. I think the difference, my experience between doing 10, 20 minutes versus doing 30 or 40 minutes is not that much different, but going all the way up to an hour, sometime in the like 30 or 40 minute range, your body settles in a different kind of way. Not every time, more so now, but certainly not every time at the beginning. But that extra 20 or 30 minutes so a total of an hour, once you get deep into it, your brain is sort of forced to settle in on itself in a different kind of way. And it's not to say that 10 or 20 minutes isn't great. I will continue to do that sometimes as well. And that's the thing I would recommend to everybody, because you really need to learn how to just have the habit of doing it and enjoy it, have a good place to sit. If somebody's never meditated, I wouldn't start with 60 minutes a day, just because you probably you're less likely to hold on to it. And as we said at the beginning, the most important part of a practice is to do it every day.
It's like a diet. I think that most people give up on their diet after 1 to 3 months.
Yeah,
it's not till 6 months or it becomes a habit.
It's building habits, and there's lots of good books and think pieces and podcasts about building habits. And that's really what's more important here than anything else. It's not the analogy I've used with a lot of people is like stretching. Like if you can't touch your toes, you stretching for 2 hours one day is not nearly as valuable as 5 minutes for 2 weeks, which is, I think, by the math, significantly less time, but you'll be able to touch your toes in 10 days or something if you just do it for 5 minutes every day. And that's very similar to what we're talking about with meditation, where you really want it to be a daily practice. So I think I will probably continue the hour. I would like to do some more guided things. I know on the Waking Up app, which we've talked about a lot here, there's all kinds of different courses and different teachers, and I'd like to explore some more of that. Yeah, and then the other thing I'd really like to do is do a silent retreat at some point. I flirted with the idea of just doing 7 days here at my place without any inputs or anything, but it might be a little bit weird. I mean, I've done.
Should we trade spaces for a week?
Ooh.
I'll go to you. We'll do a 7-day silent retreat. You'll come here. You can sit up here, and I'll go there.
I mean, silent retreat or not, I think that's actually a really interesting idea. We have similar setups now. Yours is a bit more elaborate, but we got the.
Just a thought. I mean, I'm just playing off your thought.
Oh, somebody asked. Who is it? It was a good question. Because it leads to a lot of. Marv asked, I'm curious about Jon's meditation chair. You've talked about it before, and it's I think, as we always talk about.
Great question.
Conceptually, it's changed.
It has changed because there's a Christmas tree up here now in the place where those chairs were. Yeah. So actually, my girlfriend and I have been meditating from two different chairs, but the area I think is still a no phone zone. So
and this idea of creating spaces both in the time of like the time of day, creating space but when you wake up before there's inputs, creating literal space in your apartment or wherever you are.
I think it's more about the space. We had to do different chairs just because of the way it's arranged for the last month because of the Christmas tree. But I will go back to that, I think. But yeah, the chair is different. But I think the point is that's a space that's what it's for. If you can do that in your home, I'm lucky enough to have a large enough space where I can, kind of prescribe that to myself. But otherwise, I would just do it somewhere that doesn't remind you of bed or doesn't remind you of work, or just find a space that can be designated to relaxation and focus, and not phone, not computer, not device driven. Yeah. So that's like kind of a bit of advice. But yeah, the chair to me is now less important. I had it, but I think it's the space in which it is, where the sun comes in the morning through the window, and that stuff is still there. So there's if I'm waking up in the normal routine, there's a time where the sun comes up, and kind of halfway through the meditation, there's like a warmth that comes, and I look forward to that part. And so the space is really what matters. Maybe not the chair, like bring a pillow over, do it there.
Yeah. I think space as a larger concept, creating a literal space for yourself that's comfortable, creating a space in terms of the time of day that's just for you, creating space for yourself. Like these are really important concepts that are all part of why this is so powerful for us, is prioritizing a little bit of time and space for oneself and one's mental health in the morning is a to use the cliche, it's a game changer. Let me see if there's a few other questions.
Yeah, please.
Annika asked about my hour a day, how it's affected my energy levels. It's evened them out significantly, and that's kind of it probably is the case for all of my emotions and focus, and any way you can describe my being. It's reduced spikes. I can choose to accelerate, like I could go sprint a hill or go intense about something, but I'm not at the whim of my energy levels in the way I was before. So my energy has definitely evened out as opposed to the spikes I had before. And a lot of that is just mental energy and happiness.
Yep.
Let's see. Aslahan, forgive me if I'm saying the name wrong. What's a good minimum to do a day? I would say it almost doesn't matter. Like, I think
just do it.
If you do 5 minutes a day, it's fine. 10 seems like a reasonable amount. I think 10 is a good amount. I know, Jon, you said you do 20 twice a day. Transcendental meditation is the course that they do, and it costs money and all that, is like 20 minutes twice a day. I know some people that do that. We talked about that earlier. Somebody asked in there. I think everybody, if you haven't done it, guided meditation, 10 minutes a day in the morning.
Big question there from Brody Miles. Have you hit inbox zero?
Have I hit inbox zero? So that's the Naval term.
I was going to ask you that question as well.
Well, Naval says, how do you know somebody asked him, how do you know when you've hit inbox zero? And he said, oh, you'll know. So the fact that I'm a little unsure of the answer to the question maybe means no. But also I've meditated a lot before and meditated for extended periods sometimes. And I've reached the point before, and somebody asked, which we haven't really talked about, somebody asked about psychedelic experiences. And I have taken some psychedelics in the past, and that's one of those like chemical, it takes you right to that experience. But
I was going to bring that up when we were talking about how did it get started.
Yeah.
And I had one of those experiences when I was 18 or 19 that made me what I would refer to as a black or blank mind. It's like I would close my eyes and the noise had been taken away.
Yeah.
From one of those experiences, and I've wanted to get back to that since. So that was kind of the answer. I was a little hesitant to discuss that, but that was a big moment, and I've been trying to get back to that, and I kind of have that most of the time. It's like
what doing psychedelics did for me was, and other people have said this better than I'll say it, is it made me realize there are other states of consciousness. So I don't do hallucinogens very often. Or really much anymore at all in a significant way, because I can achieve a lot of that stuff out of meditation. So somebody asked, what is the inbox zeros, Naval's, which you said a little bit earlier, this idea that if your brain is like your inbox with 2,000 unread emails, doing lots of meditation basically reads all those emails or reads those things in your mind that unearths them. You see them in front of you, and then you allow them without judgment to go. So I feel like I've reached inbox zero a few times before, but there have been a few times in this just in the last week or so, where in the middle of my meditation, everything's just very clear, and I'm in a pure state of observing awareness. And it lasts. The longest it's lasts for is maybe 30 seconds, which anybody who meditates knows, like, that's a fucking eternity of just nothing happening. And then thoughts return, and I kind of address them, but with absolutely nothing. I think I've reached that a few times. It's very interesting. I don't even know if it's certainly, there aren't really goals, I guess, in a sense, but it is a place to reach that's very fascinating.
It's funny. A lot of this is I don't know how true this is. I think it's true. I feel like I exist that way most of the time. And it makes me a little bit kind of opposite of meditative, where I'm easily, or potentially easily, like if anything takes me out of that moment, almost feel selfish to admit it. I'm like, why am I thinking, why do I have to think about this right now? Like that's so unnecessary to have, maybe because I'm in that state of mind, I can project that there's another way to handle this, but you can't tell someone how else to handle something because they're going to handle it their own way. And the minute you tell them how to do something, it doesn't matter if they realize it a week later or not, they have to realize it on their own. So it's hard sometimes for me to not be kind of only in the moment, like only here, and not, like the idea of Sam talks about, like you should, or try not to worry twice about the same thing. When we were talking about that earlier, I'd really practice that. Now, granted, I don't have kids, so it's easier for me not to worry about like maybe a kid running out in the street while you're playing. There's obviously different examples of what you could preemptively worry about. I have less of those, so I can do this without hurting anybody else's feelings. Like if I had a wife who was overprotective of the children, like this would be a different conversation, and then maybe that'll change one day. But I really try not to worry about things like so for example, I rode my bike for an hour, and I told my girlfriend that I'd be back in a half hour before coming on here, because I wanted to get back in time. But I really needed an hour this morning. I didn't realize it. I was on the bike up hills for an hour, and I just didn't even realize it. And she was like, "Oh, I was worried. You said you were coming back." And not like really worried, but I mean, if something were to happen, she'd find out. Like, just, you don't have to worry about that extra 30 minutes. And that's a real life. It's kind of mundane example, but that's what we worry about. Oh, you said this, you didn't come home in that amount of time. I hope you're okay. Like, well, I don't worry that way. Because I realize that if something were to happen, I'll hear about it, that I'm going to be really in that mode of worry to handle that circumstance when it were to happen, because I can't do anything to have changed if I fell off my bike, or if that happened to her, or happened to my dad at home. Like, why do I have to worry that my dad's going to have a heart attack? Because maybe he'll have a heart attack, and then I have to worry about getting on a plane to get home to help take care of him. That's the worry. Not to worry constantly about his diet that he might, there's no good that's going to come from that. So I think that with the practice and before, I've kind of existed in that way. most of the time. So this practice kind of feels natural to me.
Do you feel like the thing that you're getting out of it is acceptance then and non-judgment of other people's reactivity?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's tough. I don't judge the reactivity, but it affects me.
Yeah, me too.
It can affect me. I'm pretty good to a degree of letting it not affect me. There's a threshold. Like say you're in an argument with someone or a disagreement, I can handle probably the first 30 minutes of it. The minute it gets over that, like to that 31, I'm like, wait, we didn't cover this already? Like, I thought we already did this. But maybe I'm wrong and maybe I missed something too. So I try to see it from that perspective. But yeah, it's acceptance and being okay with reactivity and sitting with it for a minute and trying to help process it. It's tricky, but the practice
it is tricky. The practice helps.
It's with clients. It's back to work. It happens with note giving and people's reactions to a first mix pass. You're like, did you not understand the intention here? Do you want to acknowledge why it sounds this way? Could it be better? But you're not willing for it to be better because you're not even really listening. Like you're just like playing it back once, saying, "Oh, it's different." You know, there's, you know. There's a lot of real life examples that the practice helps me go, okay, let's not take this personally. It has nothing to do with me. And I don't need to worry about why they feel the way they do. That's how they feel. And I'm not trying to change people.
Radical acceptance. I'll see. I think we kind of covered everything. Oh, there's one or two other questions. I'm going to hit people back on DMs because they're a little more involved. I guess just to wrap it up, meditation is a huge part of both of our lives. The Waking Up app is what we both use, although other things are great. Just doing it, finding a daily practice that works for you, that is you by yourself, maybe with a guide before you get any inputs in the day, hugely beneficial. I guess hit us, and by us I mean me. Hit me with more questions. I can send you guys things. Yeah, hit John as well. This is an interesting topic. I think a little more difficult for me to get into because we're not talking about music, but I think really useful for people who've been having a lot of discussions about it. I'd love to talk about it more with you guys. So it's changed my life. My closest friends have acknowledged it as well, especially during a lockdown when you're only seeing the same 5-6 people. Yeah. It's been acknowledged to me as well. So I feel like I could at least say that. So there's some sort of factual evidence that in the last 2 years that my ability to be less reactive and present has been felt by others. So that's what I think we're doing it for. Yeah. Sam talks about this in Waking Up in some of the dailies. It's like, we're doing this to be better for the people around us as well as ourselves. This is not just for us. It's a lot for us, but to affect the people around us in a positive way. Absolutely. So that's why I do it. I want to be better to the people closest to me and the people that are not as close to me. Just why not just be kind and generous with our time? And, why not be? I would add, why not be? Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for checking it out. It was a little different topic for today, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hit us with questions, comments, thoughts. John, love you very much. Stay safe out there and happy holidays, man. Likewise. Thank you guys very much. Bye.